Okay, you guys. Disclosure. For those of you who are new here, my family already knows this, but for those of you who are new here, my children are loud. They're just loud. I try to record in a moment where I think everybody is sitting quietly and playing nicely, and it never ever fails. The moment I pull out the camera, they're just loud. So I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. Hey family, it's Danielle, and today I'm going to sit down with you guys for our Tuesday talk, Tuesday chat. We are going to chat about my experiences as a Black female in America. So being Black in America. So grab your drinks, sit down, and let's chat it up.
The snob life, the homeschooling life, the boss life, the non-traditional life, the family life,
telling it how it is, life outside the box.
And if you don't know what that means,
it's the non-traditional mommy.
Baby.
Before we get into this video, if you are new here, hi, my name is Danielle and I am the non-traditional mommy. And on this channel, we do Tuesday chats where we sit down and chat about different topics. So if that interests you, feel free to hit the subscribe button and join my little family. For the rest of my non-traditional family, you guys are the MVPs and I love you bunches. Now, let's chat, you guys. So I am drinking coffee this morning out of my cup, my coffee mug that I made at, I don't remember what it's called. It's like a pottery place where you paint your own pottery. But yeah, it has all my little quotes and reminders. I wanted to chat about my experiences as a Black female. I've seen a couple people do this video where they just talked about being Black in America and their experiences with racism and different things like that. And I thought that those videos were so good. What was happening before in the past is we weren't talking about these things. And if we were talking about it, it was amongst other Black people. So we would share our experiences with each other. Rarely did we share our experiences with other people of other races. It's just never been a topic that has been discussed the way that it's being discussed today. But I think that it's great and it's beneficial because for those of us who have close friends of different races who have no idea what our experiences have been or what we've been through, maybe hearing it from us can help enlighten them a little bit more or broaden their thought view or take the blinders off or whatever the case may be. You know, it's like the old saying, it doesn't really matter until it hits home. And so if you don't know anybody that's been through it or if you don't know anybody that has it or whatever, it doesn't necessarily hit home. So I think us sharing our experiences is a way for it to hit home and maybe resonate with some people who think racism is an illusion or a figment of our imagination. So for me, the bulk of my racism that I experienced came when I moved to Tennessee. I had a son and he was in school, and when he was in school, I think he was in the third grade. He had to be like third or fourth grade. And at the time, me and my husband were together. And I remember going to a parent-teacher conference, and my husband didn't come to that one. And I went, and she was like, oh, well, you know, because I'm sure you'd be out partying and things like that. And I'm like, no, I don't party. And she's like, oh, you don't go out, you don't go to clubs, or you don't do this. And I'm looking at her like, what does this have to do with anything? And what makes you think that I go out to clubs and party? Like, what are you talking about? Remember, I always have to constantly prove or attempt to prove myself to this teacher. But I very much so felt like it was because I was black. My son was the only black kid in his class, and it was just a lot of different things that we had to deal with her. I remember my husband, us going to a parent-teacher conference, and we showed up together. We walked in, the teachers looked at each other, and we sat down, and my husband was like, we introduced ourselves. Hi, I'm DJ's mom, and he's like, I'm DJ's dad. And they were like, oh, we didn't know, that his dad, that you were around. You guys, do you live in the same household? And we're like, who asks these kind of questions? Like, is this a normal question that you ask people? And it was like a look of just complete shock on their face that my son had two parents and that his father was in the same house as him. So those things started kind of coming up once I was an adult, and once I was in Tennessee, and once I had kids of my own that were in school. Before me and my husband got married, we had Jaden. So she had her last name, which was my husband's last name, but I still had my maiden name. And anytime that I would try to register her for something or sign her up for something, it was automatically assumed that her father was not in her life. Automatically assumed. I would get an application. They would give me an application, and they would say, okay, you're going to fill out this part. You can leave. If her dad's not around, just leave that part blank. Don't worry about that. We don't need that information. And I'm like, her dad's around. He's around. He lives in our house. Like, we're engaged. He's around. So by the time me and my husband got married, we had 3 kids, and I would be out with my 3 kids, and never ever, every single time, it was always assumed that I was a single mother with 3 kids. Every time. If I went into the grocery store and I would be ringing out our groceries, when it was time to pay, I remember a cashier was like, is this going to be EBT or, and I'm like, and EBT in Tennessee is basically food stamps. And not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm like, who asked that question? Who says that? Who automatically assumes that you're paying with food stamps? Because I'm black? Like, what? I was at Walgreens one time, and I had my hair just blown out or whatever, and I'm in line, and I'm in my purse trying to get my payment, and the lady reaches over and she touches my hair, and she says, oh, it's actually soft. And I was like, did you just touch my hair? And then I'm like, my brain is trying to process, like, did this lady just reach over the counter and put her hands in my hair? And then did she just say, it's actually soft? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. And I'm like, you need to have some self-control. And what were you expecting it to be? That to this day, I still am like, I can't believe that actually happened. And so it was those things. Again, no like extreme racism. It was very, very like underlined kind of tone, things that would be said, those kind of things. So fast forward, my husband bought a Jeep. and we're riding in the Jeep or whatever, and we get pulled over by the police. And they're like, license and registration. And we show them to them. And the cop literally was like, oh, I didn't know black people drove Jeeps. Basically, I stopped you because you're black and you're driving a Jeep. And I didn't know, like, black people driving Jeep Wranglers is not a thing. And this was in 2007, I think, 2007. But it's like, we can drive Jeeps. Like, we can buy Jeeps and we can drive them. But he literally pulled us over because he saw a black person driving a Jeep and thought that that was alarming. So a lot of my experiences with racism were more covert than they were just out in the open. It was always kind of passive and kind of slick and shady kind of things. It was never just like out in the open, like, you know, calling me the N-word or anything like that. It was always very kind of underlying type of racism. The other one that I got a lot, and I still get sometimes here and there, not quite as much, was the behavior of my children. So when we would be out and about, it could be anywhere, a restaurant, anywhere, I would have, and it was always white people, come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, your children are so well behaved. They're so well behaved. I can't believe how well behaved they are. Like, they are just so well behaved. I've had people buy them things because they were so well behaved. I've had people give them dollars because they were so well behaved. And the problem with that is not that it's not that there's something wrong with that, but it could be white children in this restaurant as well, and their kids have been just as well behaved, but it was my children that stood out as being well behaved, as though they were supposed to be, you know, flying around the restaurant or jumping off the tables or things like that. And it's like, yeah, okay, I don't know what you were expecting. And it always reminds me of the scene in Color Purple when she comes up to, I think it was Sophia, and says, oh, your children are so well behaved. Would you be my maid? And it's like, what? What? So it always reminds me of that. And so it's those little kind of tiny, it's more so with me, the racism that I have experienced is that I am doing things that I shouldn't be doing, or I am living a way that is outside of the norm. So it becomes a shock when I'm doing what is not expected of black people to do, if that makes sense. So she's probably not married. Oh, wow, you're married. Or she probably can't speak correct English. Oh, wow, your English, you speak so well. Or her kids probably have different dads. Oh, wait, they all have the same dad. They all have, you know, you're married, those kind of things. So it's always more so for me, I'm placed into a stereotype box, and then when I don't fit those stereotypes, it's like a shocker for people. I am usually judged before I even open my mouth. So when people see me and they see me with my kids, it's automatically assumed that I'm a single mother. It's automatically assumed that they have different dads. It's automatically assumed that I'm on government assistance. It's automatically assumed that I am uneducated. And so those assumptions then dictate how I am treated in that moment. And until I do something that breaks one of those assumptions, I'm treated a certain way. Because they've already put me in a category, in a box, I receive a certain level of service sometimes, or I receive a certain level of respect, or whatever the case may be. And then when I do something that will break one of those assumptions, then it becomes like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe she's not one of those black people. And that, you guys, oh my gosh, that always blows me away when I get, oh, you're not like them, you're different. And it's like, who is them? Who exactly are you referring to when you say I'm not like them? So it's those kind of, again, very disguised, undercover little bits of racism that I have experienced. Once my husband and I started a business and started, running a business, we started off doing inflatables, and we would go and set them up. When people would assume that we were just the help, the way that they would treat us, the way that they would talk to us, the expectations that they had were just crazy. They would let us in and they would be like, put it right there. You need to do this. No, and make sure you don't touch anything. And when you're done, when you're done, come around to this door and let me know. It was just a very like, okay, yes sir, yes ma'am. We got that a lot. When we started our indoor space, and people would come in and, if I enforced a policy, they would say, I want to speak to the manager. And I would say, I am the manager. And they would say, well, I want to speak to the person that's over you. And I would say, ma'am, I'm the owner. You're the owner? You're the owner? You're the owner. Yes, I'm the owner. So you're the owner. Yes, ma'am, I'm the owner. You own this place. Yes, ma'am, I do. There's nobody over you. Like, there's no, ma'am. Like, I am the owner. I am the owner. The opposite end that we would get when people would find out our business is black owned is total disbelief. Like, this is black owned? Like, black people own this? Like, we cannot own something to the level of what we own. Like, there's no way possible that this could be black owned. No way possible. So those kind of little sayings. And our manager is white, and so there would be times that our manager would be there and I would be there working, and and a white person would come up to her, and sometimes they would say, oh, you hired somebody new, or oh, you got extra help, or whatever, and she would turn bright red. Or they would come up to her and I would be like, hi, can I help you? They would come up to the front and I'd be like, can I help you? And they would turn to her and be like, blah, 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 and like totally disregard that I just asked them, did they need help, or can I help them with something? Covert type of things that I would experience and get. It's always, for me, more so, this is the box that you fit in. You don't belong anywhere else. This is your box. And if you do anything that is outside of that box, then I'm just like dumbfounded by you. I think the way it has affected me is, the way racism has affected me is, I feel like it's so undercover that I never know who really has my best interest in mind. For me, I'd rather a person show me their true colors so I know what I'm working with, than to try to figure out if you are secretly judging me, you are secretly racist, and the only reason you're my friend is because I'm not like those black people. And for a long time, that affected me. For a long time, I felt like I needed to be this person in this group, and then I could be my full self in other circles, which we call code switching amongst the black community. And so I always felt like I have to code switch. I can never show you the full verse of myself. Dealt with that for so long, and I finally realized, like, I'm not gonna code switch, because as a black person, we are multifaceted. We know how to turn this side on, turn this side on, be this way, be that way. Like, there's so many different parts of us, because that is how we've had to navigate through life. That is how we've had to grow up. So, you know, we may have went to a predominantly white school, so we had to walk one way, talk one way, be one way. But then when we're home with our family, it's a whole different scene. And so we learn how to navigate all these different lives and lifestyles and ways, which makes us multifaceted, which makes it very difficult for a person to stereotype us and to judge us just based off of one thing, because you have no idea. There are times where I can be 100% completely and totally what some would call ratchet by definition, and a person would see that and automatically think that I'm a single mother, baby daddy, no job, whatever the stereotypes of this person is. Whereas that's not the case. That's just the mode that I'm in, and I can be that way. There are other times where I can be business, completely stone-faced, serious, whatever, and a person could think she has no idea what it's like to live in this area, or what it's like to deal with this, or what it's like to deal with that, which is not true, because my childhood, it was not in a big fancy house suburbs. So they have no idea what the walk of my life was. So it's like, I just can be, there's multiple parts of me. So to judge me just based off of sight is so unfair. That it's so hard. It's so hard. You see a black guy and he has on jeans, and maybe his jeans are sagging a little bit, and he has dreads or whatever, and you automatically in your mind think, you know, thug. When in reality, this man could be a freaking business owner, and he's just off work in his regular relaxed clothes. So we don't fit. And I think sometimes that is what makes people uncomfortable, is that they can't label us. They can't fit us into a certain category, because they don't know, and they're not trying to get to know all of what we are. And so it just makes them uncomfortable, because we don't fit their definition of what it should look like. There was a time when I took my daughter, my oldest daughter, to the doctor. She wasn't our usual pediatrician. My daughter had to be probably 15 at the time. And she had on a shirt that says, "I am worth the wait." And the shirt represents that, you know, she is worth waiting for when it comes to losing her virginity. Her desire is to wait until marriage. And so she has this shirt that my line sister made for her that represents that I am worth the wait. She had this shirt on. And so we're in the doctor's office, and the doctor comes in, and of course they're talking about the HPV and trying to push the HPV on her. And, you know, she had done her research, because the way I operate is once they get to a certain age, especially when it comes to things like the HPV, I want them to do the research, to understand it, to learn about it, and then make an informed decision for themselves, because it's their body, and whatever results or outcome that happens, they'll be the ones that have to live with it. So she had done the research and she opted to wait. She's like, I don't want it yet, and I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to get it. So she had said she was waiting, and the doctor sits down and she's like, well, you do know that, you know, this is a sexually transmitted disease and all of this stuff. And, you know, Jaden's like, I understand. And so she's like, oh, what does your shirt say? And so she shows her shirt. She's like, it says I am worth the wait. And she's like, what does that mean? And so Jaden says, I'm basically waiting, you know, I'm saving myself for marriage. And the doctor was like, so you're not having sex yet? And Jaden's like, no. She's like, you're not having sex at all. And so Jaden looks at me like so uncomfortable. And the doctor looks at me and was like, you know, sometimes we don't know everything that our kids are doing, but it's better to just be safe than sorry. You know, she is 15. And I'm like, she's not having sex. She just told you her shirt says, I am worth the wait. So, and, you know, the doctor's like, okay. And she gets up and leaves. Needless to say, that was the last time we went to that doctor. But again, it's that covert racism, you guys. Like, there's no way that this girl is a virgin and not having sex. It's just that's just not happening. So those kind of things, once again, are the types of things that I've had to deal with when it comes to being black. There was one time my mom was at our house with our kids. She calls us, we're at dinner. She calls us and she's like, the cops are here and I don't know what's going on. And we're like, what? So we hurry up and pay. We pull up to our house. The cops are outside the door. And, you know, my husband gets out the car. We're getting out the car. And the cop instantly put his hands on his gun. It was 3 cops. He instantly put his hand on his gun. And, you know, my husband's like, what's going on? He has his hands up. And I come around. I'm like, what is happening? And they're like, where were you? And we're like, we were at dinner. Like, what is going on? And they were like, we got a call that, you know, you were going to commit suicide. And we're like, what? But our thing was, if I am going to commit suicide, you're at my house because you think I'm going to commit suicide. Why is your hand on your gun? You're going to kill me because I want to commit suicide? So that was like, whoa, like, whoa, very, very scary moment. You instantly, like, he got out the car and you instantly, your first instinct was to put your hand on your gun. So just those little tiny things, you know, that I think people don't pay attention to when it comes to how would you have reacted if we were white and got out the car. So it's just, sometimes it's so tiny that it can be missed unless you know what it is, unless you're looking for it, unless your eyes are open to notice it. And if you have a certain level of privilege, of course, it's hard to notice these things. Recently, travels to Alabama for our second location, and we usually will stay in an Airbnb. Now we stay at the same Airbnb. So my husband is unloading the car, and he had brought the kids with him. I was already there. So they're unloading the car, and he has our 3 daughters with him, our 3 oldest daughters. And another person in another condo comes out of their house and they're like, what are you doing here? what are you doing going in that house? Like, are you about to throw a party? I'm going to call the cops if you throw a party. And if you're loud, and you better, and I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call the cops because I think that you're having a party. You're going in that house and it's 3 women. And he's like, these are my daughters. He's like, I'm calling the cops. And so my husband's like, yeah, you probably should, because right now you're harassing me. The cops ended up coming and they were like, this guy has a reservation. There's nothing we can do. But the fact that this white guy felt the audacity to come out of his house and threaten and say, you know, you're about to have a party. I know you're having a party. You got 3 women with you. And it's like, these are children. These are children. And you're calling them women? I would say that overall, my experiences have definitely not been as bad as a lot of people experiences. I acknowledge that 100%. And I think maybe the reason that I didn't necessarily experience things to the degree that a lot of people did is A, where I grew up, the type of family that I grew up in. And then I went to a HBCU. So I had, which for those of you who don't know, that's a historically black college slash university. So that gave me a different experience as well. I want to end this video with saying that every black person's experience in America is going to be different. All of our walks are not the same. All of our stories are not the same. All of our experiences are not the same. But there's not going to be a single black person in this country that has walked through their life and not experienced some form of racism. Rather it was out in the open, very harsh, very cruel, or rather it was disguised, passive, and very covert type racism. Every black person has experienced racism. And some of us every day, some of us once a week, some of us once a month, once a year. The amount that we experience varies, and it matters also on what part of the country we live in, what region we live in as well. It also matters how we look on what type of experiences, on what type of racism that we will experience. So rather it's in the workplace, rather it's in school, rather it's at the grocery store, rather it's just driving down the street, walking down the street, whatever it is, we risk the possibility of experiencing racism, period. It doesn't matter. Every day that we wake up and we walk into the world, there is an opportunity and a chance and a likelihood that we will run into some type of racism. And until people recognize this and acknowledge this, that will continue to be a problem. Until people start calling it out, it will continue to be a problem. So for example, if you're at the grocery store and you see very clearly that somebody is doing something racist or saying something racist, until you call that person out, they will think that behavior is acceptable. Even within your family members, until you call people out for saying little snarky things that they will say was a joke, it will continue to happen. Like, these things cannot continue. What once may have been considered a joke can no longer be considered a joke. So I implore you to talk to your black friends about their experiences, to hear them out, to open your eyes and your ears the next time you're out and about and around a black person, to watch and see if you witness a racist moment. And if you do, to speak out about it. So that's what I encourage you to do. If you're black, share your story. Share it. Now's the time. Share, 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 and share. Educate, educate, educate. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them below. We can keep the conversation going down below. If you haven't subscribed and joined my family, hit the subscribe button. To the rest of my family, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.